Hey everyone. Hey, listen, this is exciting. I'm on my last day of vacation, so I'm going to be back next Friday with this podcast. It'll be me plus James. But right now, listen, you're about ready to be super blessed. James is hosting for me again. His guest today is the real Don Stewart. Listen, this is incredible. They're going to be bringing details about Ezekiel 38 and 39 and the timing of it. And not only that, also this peace deal that just happened over in Israel between Israel and the UAE, the Temple Mount, what is coming. Let me tell you, this is absolutely terrific. I know you're going to be super blessed. Listen, kick back and enjoy it. And I can't wait to see you next time as I'm back with James. God bless.
Well, guys, I want to welcome you to the Real Hope with Tom and James show, except for one thing. Tom is not here again this week, and I am super blessed and excited to have the great Don Stewart on with me. As you guys know, Don and I do a lot of work together, and I'm super honored by that. But Don is just profoundly wise in the area of Bible prophecy. He's an apologist. He's written well over the 59 free books that you have available on educatingourworld.com. You can go there. You can download them for free. He's written a lot more than that. He is, I believe this. I really believe this in my heart. He's a national treasure to believers and in our country and in our world. And he's such a blessing. So Don, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing great, James. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the nice introduction. It's very humbling to hear that. I don't, you're going over the top, but I appreciate it.
It ain't over the top to me. You know that. Anyway, super glad you're here, bro. And as you know, Tom loves it. He just has this thing where he just likes to throw a topic out at me and then just make me go. So I'm going to do the same with you. I'm actually going to leave it a bit open-ended to you, but I know that a lot of people want to hear about what's been going on in Israel lately with this peace treaty and the UAE and all of the details that surround that. So light us up. Talk to us about this whole thing.
Okay, just a few days ago, what we had is something that we really weren't expecting. That is an agreement between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. And the agreement basically would form some type of relationship between the two countries, something that was unheard of, a peace treaty, as it will. Now, this would only be the third Arab country that would have a peace treaty with Israel. The other was Egypt in 1979, the second Jordan in 2004. But what it does, James, and what is very interesting about this basically reverses everything we've seen in the last 20, 30 years. For example, Israel's best friend 30 years ago and even more recently was Iran. And then Turkey was also the best friend of Israel. Their enemies were who? Egypt, Jordan, and the Gulf states. So it's completely flipped around. It's amazing. But what does the Bible say? The Bible says that in the last days, when there's an invasion of Israel, in Ezekiel 38, 39, there'll be four interested parties. Number one, Israel, who's being invaded. Number two, the nations that do invade. Number three, the United States, which is conspicuous by its absence, no superpower. But number four, and here's where our interest is, James. Number four, simply that there's going to be Gulf states, Sheb and Dedan, which refers to the Gulf states, which will protest the invasion, which means basically this, that they have some type of a relationship with Israel. They're not on the side of the invaders, but they protest what's going on to the place where they don't like what they see, but they don't get involved militarily. Now, that tells us there has to be something that the Gulf states and Israel get together with. And you know as well as I do, James, this is literally unheard of. Can you imagine just a few years ago this happening? But because of a common enemy, and that's the country of Iran, we see Israel now joining with first United Arab Emirates and probably somebody else very soon, who knows? And so this is why we're at where we're at right now. But the bottom line for us is this is exactly what the Bible said is going to happen at the time of the end. This is the coalition, the lineup that's there. And here we have it right now. If we were doing this program in 1973, everything would be backwards. And so we would be trying to convince people, well, someday, let's say Egypt is going to be a friend of Israel, and so is the Gulf states and Jordan. And someday the enemies now of Israel, the friends of Israel, Iran and Turkey, are going to be enemies. Because remember, Turkey is the first Muslim country that recognized Israel. But can't make this stuff up. As the Bible said, James, here we are.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And it's obvious to us that this thing is continuing to set the stage. So I have a question for you. There's a lot of people that will look at this and say that this is Daniel, the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 9. They're specifically pointing at verse 27. I know that there are lots of great people that are making arguments that this is setting the stage for what you see in Daniel 9:27. But there's some people that are out there that are actually saying, oh no, this is the deal. Trump might be the Antichrist here, or is the Antichrist. And then especially hearing the press conference from President Trump yesterday, where he actually stated that there would be other nations potentially jumping in on this deal. What do you think about this? Is this the Antichrist? I mean, I know the answer to that. I just want you to talk about it.
Yeah, no, it's not Daniel 9:27. This isn't the confirmation of the covenant that will start the last 7-year period known as the 70th week of Daniel, or the time of Jacob's trouble. Not at all. So no, it's not that in the least. What we see here, James, is the stage setting of this, because remember, we have to have some type of relationship between Israel and the Gulf states to the point where they would protest. Because why mention them at all in Ezekiel 38 if they don't have some type of relationship there? So basically, it's setting the stage for what's going on, but not a specific fulfillment of prophecy. But like we've talked about before, with the players lining up, setting the stage for the actual fulfillment down the line of last days Bible prophecy.
Yeah, that's right. That's very, very good. But what's exciting about this is to just consider all of the other implications, because there are many other implications of this, by the way. One of the things that I think astounded me, and maybe have you comment on it, was Jared Kushner. And I don't know, were you able to see that clip that I sent you of Jared Kushner?
No, I haven't been able to see it yet, but I've been watching other stuff and listening to other stuff and reading other stuff he said. And basically, there's a lot of things there. And you're talking specifically about the Temple Mount. Why don't you explain what it was? Because I didn't have a chance to listen to it after you sent it to me the other day. I've been so busy.
Yeah, so this is so substantial. This is a pretty incredible picture. So one of the things that a lot of people have questioned quite a bit is the fact that, we know that Jerusalem is in essence the epicenter. The core of that epicenter, of course, is the Temple Mount, and lots of news has been coming out of there. It's a complete changeover from what it used to be. When I started studying the Bible 27 years ago. But what's incredible is that one of the things that people have always questioned and have always sort of second guessed is how in the world are we going to see any kind of real live photography or pictures or anything like that on the Temple Mount when they're so strict about the photography that's going on right now. Now, a lot of people say, well, this is the reason why they're so strict about it is because of religious reasons. The Muslims don't like photos being taken and so on and so forth. And there's some truth to that. But the 8 times that I've been to Israel and the many times I've been on the Temple Mount, I just go out of my way and just ask people because I speak Arabic. And the number one answer that I get, at least the honest answers, is they don't want any video going out showing any evidence of the fact that Israel has any sovereignty over that particular area, especially near the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Al-Haram al-Sharif. Everybody calls it the Golden Dome. What's interesting now with this is Jared Kushner gets up there and he said, and so let me just back up for a second. That creates a huge problem, right? That's like, okay, well, how are we going to see what's going on live? How are we going to see what's going on? Everything in this area, how's that going to take place? Well, Jared Kushner, as part of this peace deal, said one of the wonderful things, besides diplomatic communications now being carried forth between the two nations and them, sharing embassies and so on and so forth, is this agreement to allow these Gulf Arab states, to be able to fly into Ben Gurion for the first time. So we're going to get the Emirates in there. We're going to get people from Saudi Arabia, the UAE. The royal family in Saudi Arabia had to have proved it, obviously, because we know for a fact that Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed is not going to make any kind of decision without their approval. So obviously they're the beneficiaries of all of this. And so they're going to be able to actually travel to the Temple Mount without any real restriction. And I assume the implications of this is that there will be some kind of a mutually agreed upon peacekeeping force that will be between these two nations that will sort of manage it, as opposed to simply soldiers and guards from the IDF IDF that's actually watching that area. Now, this is what Jared Kushner said in light of all of this. He said, what's going to be so brilliant about this and so wonderful is that people are now going to be able to go and visit. They're going to go see the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They're going to go over here. They're going to see, all the areas on the Temple Mount. And they'll be free to take pictures. They'll be free to take live videos, and they'll be able to get on their Facebook or on their social media and show the whole world that everything is going to be okay. And so the implication here is that now we've got the ability to be able to broadcast from the Temple Mount, from the area, these very sensitive areas of Jerusalem, and it's going to make what we see happening in Jerusalem or in Revelation a lot easier now for the whole world to be able to see, which is something that's always been debated about and something that's always been talked about back and forth.
Okay, yeah. The difference, of course, then there'll be a Jewish temple on the Temple Mount. So
That's right.
A little bit different situation.
That's right.
But the setup where the Israelis will be in total control. We don't know if the Dome of the Rock will still be standing or the Al-Aqsa Mosque, because there's 5 different possible places on the Temple Mount where the temple once stood, and one would be over the Dome of the Rock. In fact, a couple, one to the north of that, and a few others right near the Al-Aqsa Mosque where it is today. So it seems, James, when the third temple is built, either or both those buildings have probably disappeared one way or another. But be that as it may, the fact that we have the technology today on the Temple Mount, like you said, to show things live, to show the world live, which would be interesting too if there's a few years where Muslims are still ruling the Temple Mount, maybe the Israeli police are not in police uniforms, anything like that. The people would be more maybe, used to seeing something there. And then after, which I believe after the Ezekiel 38, 39 invasion there, when everything is different on the Temple Mount, they'll be seeing a whole different setup there with the Jews themselves having a third temple offering sacrifices and the whole world seeing that. But be that as it may, we know that technology is here. That's the key. Just like we're doing this with one another, people watching from all over the place. The same thing is going to be true. And James, because this is one of your fields, the exponential increase of technology, as great as it is today, how great is it going to be tomorrow? Huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And actually, that was my point. My point is the Middle Eastern mind it's kind of interesting. It's being able to create an adaptation of the acceptance of that kind of technology being there. You see, because the whole idea is we've had this technology forever, but on the Temple Mount, it's been strictly forbidden. I mean, right to the point where they don't even like closed circuit TV connections to be on the Temple Mount. So it's always provided for them some serious security problems. And actually, I just personally, just a little side note, I actually think that the temple, and I don't know I kind of know what you think because you convinced me to go the other way, but I actually think the temple is going to be built right on top of where the Golden Dome is. I mean, I think they're going to have to destroy the Golden Dome and build it right on top of there. And I think that's what's going to happen. But my whole point behind it is the comfort level of that technology being deployed in that area is historic because we've never seen that before. Now we're going to start seeing it, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's a good point. In other words, they'll get used to seeing things on the Temple Mount, whether there's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, whether there's the Golden Dome, the shrine there, or a third temple someday. And so, again, like we've talked about before, James, these all happen incrementally in the steps there. It doesn't happen overnight. None of this happens overnight, but we've seen building up. Just like we said earlier, here you have Turkey and Iran, the enemies of Israel, mortal enemies today when they're the best friends just not that long ago. Egypt, which was a mortal enemy of Israel, now has the peace treaty. It's been on for 40 years, Jordan since 1994, and now it seems at least one of the Gulf states, maybe another one soon. But the point we want to make is that this is what the Bible predicted would happen, and we've been saying for years it would happen when just the opposite was there. But God tells us how everything's going to be, organized at the time of the end, and that's precisely what we see right now. Now, we had an interesting story, though, the other day when Sudan, supposedly some spokesman from Sudan said, well, we're next. We're going to line up with Israel. We're going to have a relationship. And he got shot down right away. One of the problems is Sudan's one of the nations going to invade Israel. So they're not going to have a relationship. I'm sorry. They're going to be one along with Libya, Russia, Iran, Turkey, and some of the central republics of the former Soviet Union there, which will be the invading forces. So it's interesting how God will make sure, and it's happening right in front of our eyes, that these nations that are going to invade will invade, and those that won't will be sitting on the sidelines, either protesting or just sitting on their hands.
Yeah, and what is perhaps the most enlightening to me and exciting to be able to see in this situation is, as a result of this peace treaty and many of the other recent maneuverings that have been taking place, or shall I say misgivings, by these nations that will be attacking, it looks like Israel's becoming more and more strong, especially economically. The natural resources that they are continuing to pursue in terms of energy independence and many of the other things that they're doing right now is unbelievably cool, because we know, and this is something you might want to comment on, I'd actually like you to comment on, and that's the fact that two things. When Israel is attacked, they're going to be shocked, right? They're going to be surprised, kind of like Sucker Punch. What the heck happened? Because it would seem as though they're going to have to, or they will have had some kind of diplomatic relationships established with at least one of these nations, very likely Russia. But what's also very interesting to me is the fact that they are going to be attacking simply because they need plunder. I mean, they want Israel's goods and resources, and maybe oil is one of these big things, especially considering where Russia is with oil right now, the disagreements they're having with Saudi Arabia, which also plays into this picture of Saudi Arabia being one of the nations that object to this attack. This, like you said, you can't make this stuff up.
No, and James, when you look at a map and you see how small Israel is compared to the nations that invade, you wonder what in the world is going on, because Israel, you have to write the name out in the Mediterranean Sea. You can't even write the name in the country, the landmass. It's so small. It's the same. Yeah, it's the size of New Jersey or Lake Michigan. It's not very large at all. And yet here are these countries, and when you ever see it on a map, you would color them in. All these countries, probably millions of square kilometers, from Russia to Iran, Turkey, Libya, and the other ones, are going to, Persia or Iran, going to invade Israel. Why would you take this one little tiny nation and invade it? Because Israel happens to have something they want and something they need, whether it be the wealth there in the Golan Heights, possible oil fields there, the liquid natural gas out in the Mediterranean, or the wealth there in the Dead Sea, or maybe all of the above. But they have something that these countries want, but also something they need. And so they're going to take a spoil. So Israel is there. Now, remember this too. We're told not only Ezekiel 38:8 at the time of the end, Israel still exists. It's obviously a wealthy country, James. You don't invade some poverty-stricken country with a bunch of come around to take plunder. There's got to be plunder to take, right? And Israel's got it. Israel's the 8th most powerful country in the world right now, even though existing a little over 70 years. And so all of this is setting the stage for what the scriptures will happen sometime in the future. So from our perspective today, the players have lined up. They're lined up in the right spot right now. It's just a matter of, God's timing when it all takes place. But Israel is certainly in this position of great wealth and, continues to produce that. And so we're just seeing, as the Bible says, a scenario that you just can't make up on your own. It's something supernatural that Ezekiel some 2,650 years ago predicted about the time of the end, and voila, here we are right now.
So Don, let me ask you a question, and these are questions both me and you get quite a bit, and it might be beneficial for the people that are watching, especially based on comments that I've seen already from this people group that watch us. But there's a lot of people that actually say that the battle of Ezekiel 38 and 39 is something we're going to see happen and even potentially end before the church is actually raptured. And of course, I don't believe that. I know you don't. Can you give me your thoughts on this? Maybe some evidence of why that's the case?
Yeah. First of all, Christians aren't in agreement with the exact time of the Ezekiel 38-39 battle. One of the free books that I have on the website, educatingourworld.com, we have one on the Ezekiel 38-39 invasion and a couple others I've done, and basically kind of lay out some of the different possible scenarios. To me, what the clincher is, James, is chapter 39. After this invasion, it says the people of the earth realize that the God of the Bible is working with the nation of Israel. Now, to me, that tells us the church is not around, the New Testament church, because God is again working with Israel like he did before the time of Christ. And so it's the final 7 years, the seventh week of Daniel, that we're seeing this take place in. Whether it's the beginning of it, the middle, or towards the end, people can debate. I think it's rather much toward the beginning. But bottom line is, I think we as a church, meaning the believers in Christ, are not there simply because of the response that's there, because God is obviously working again for the nation Israel.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And it's kind of the clincher for me too. It's the big reason why I think the way I think. And then the other thought process is about the Antichrist. There's a lot of talk about the Antichrist, and seeing the Antichrist. Is he showing up right now? Am I taking the mark? Everyone's really scared about, am I actually committing Revelation 13? And I'm always telling them, listen, Revelation 13 doesn't happen until well after the church is raptured. But here's a question, and it's an important one. A lot of people ask it. Is it possible that we as Christians are going to see the final Antichrist? And of course, why I say the final Antichrist. I stole that from you, right? But are we going to see the final Antichrist?
No, we're not. We may see it, but we won't know it's him. And you can't have a mark without the beast. The beast got to come first. And that's going to happen in the midpoint of the final 7-year period, well into that, when he's a man of peace coming on the scene, the rider on the white horse in the book of Revelation. And so that's still something in the future. And so we've got to be careful. You've got all these extremes now, James. We've talked about them. People coming out and saying this vaccine is the mark of the beast and all that. And, and the end is near. And because of that, we've got to be careful. Someone will put it on us in our sleep. No, the whole world's going to know what it is, what they're doing, and they're going to willingly take it or willingly refuse it. The literal line will be drawn in the sand there. So this is not it. The final Antichrist will come from the revived Roman Empire, Western Europe. That's another reason why I believe the Ezekiel 38-39 invasion takes place before the final 7-year period, or right at the very beginning. Well, actually before the rapture of the church, simply because of the lineup there, because the power base is going to be in Western Europe at that time. It's not going to be anywhere else. And the revival of the old Roman Empire will take place then. And that's what we're going to see this final Antichrist come out of one of those final 10 nations that are there in this revived empire. And so the idea that, this is the mark of the beast, and this is the fulfillment of Daniel 9:27, the confirming of a covenant of the 7 years, the final 7 years. No, we don't know what the covenant or the agreement specifically is. It's probably some type of peace treaty, but we don't know with whom, and we don't know who puts it together. But we do know this Antichrist, according to Daniel 9:27, will probably confirm it or make it firm or make it stand. It doesn't necessarily mean he comes up with it, but he is the one that makes sure it works. And so, your guess is as good as mine of what exactly the peace treaty is, but it's certainly not between one Gulf state, UAE, and Israel. It's got to be much, much more than that.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm thinking it's multiple. It's probably a whole conglomerate of nations. And eventually I think that what might happen, and this is a possibility, again, I'm not saying it will happen, but what might happen is they may just take a series of these treaties and basically put it together as one global kind of in the name of one global treaty for that area. It is interesting, especially in that press conference that President Trump gave yesterday, that his whole goal right now is peace in the Middle East. It's one of the things that he wants to do. And again, it's what I would like to call the third, the fourth, or even the fifth rail of politics. That's almost an impossible thing to touch. This UAE-Israel thing is pretty extraordinary, but it is unique. So there's a lot of other headlines around the world right now, Don, a lot of things that are happening. What else would you say is pretty significant to the time that we're in? Are there other things you're thinking about or looking at right now?
Yeah, many of them. One of the things that we're all facing right now is the lockdown from the Chinese Communist Party coronavirus that has basically put the whole world in turmoil. That's keeping us here in America and many other countries. 1 billion, that's with a B, James, 1 billion students are not going to school right now or will not go to school in the fall because of this. The economic impact is, horrific. The number of lives that are lost is incalculable. And the whole problem is because of one thing and one thing only, and that's the actions of the Chinese Communist Party, which seem to be getting away with this. The Democrat Party here in America is trying to blame Donald Trump. They're not blaming the Chinese Communist Party. So we're seeing that with the lockdowns that are going on, and which that leads to, which we've talked about before on a radio program, it's setting the stage of taking away the freedoms of people under the guise of healthcare. We care about you, so we don't want you going out and mingling with other people. You have to stay apart. And if your job isn't essential, according to us, I'm sorry, you got it, gone. But guess what? We're going to hand you money so you don't have to work for a living, and the government will take care of you. So, James, so many things are happening at once, aren't they? Not only the globalism, but the way the universal basic income, all of this is coming together. And so they're training people, training the world. You have to obey a certain way. And we're seeing this, and, it's coming. It's, assumed to be true in the future. And right now we're seeing it for the first time in our lives.
Yeah, I'm blown away by it. I watched the Democratic National Committee for the first few days, and it's just made me hurl. It was so disgusting. Every single person lied. And the reason why I know that is because they opened their mouths. And what was incredible with Chuck Schumer, and shame on him. I mean, I think the guy's such a turncoat because he actually is an American first. He's also a Jew, and he's turned his back on both nations. Did you hear what he called the virus? He called it the European virus. He refused to call it the Chinese virus or make any association with China. Why? Because China owns him, just like they own a lot of these other guys. And it's another reason why I'm so thankful for the president, who has actually taken such a great stand against all of these guys who are doing the evil that they did. And I personally think that this virus was made in a lab somewhere. I think that's eventually going to come out. We know that. Certainly the actions of the Chinese Communist Party has been nefarious with respect to all of this. This is not a question in our mind. We know that it's nefarious activity. And we know it's because they've been losing the economic war between the United States and China. And certainly it's added to that, which is also very interesting because I think it might contribute to the very fact that we're not going to see China or the United States in end times prophecy, because I think we're going to fight ourselves straight to the ground in some cases.
Yeah, it seems like we're going to cancel each other out because the power is going to be in the Middle East. That's where the whole action is going to be at the time of the end, and then move up to Western Europe. The United States and China are not players at the time of the end, and we probably will cancel each other out. There's a variety of ways, either economically through, whatever it might be, or maybe war. We just don't know. We know what's really sad. Little Rocket Man today was, it said there's a report from the State Department that he has, something like 60 nuclear weapons. We know he has the capacity to deliver them anywhere, hit any place in the United States of America. But he's also got this incredible amount of chemical weapons there too, which is very, very frightening to realize that. I guess just a small bit of anthrax, I was told, I remember reading this, a small vial that could kill something like 50,000 people there in South Korea if it was put there and sold, something like that. And he's got tons of the stuff. And so we've got that going on too, James. And, so who knows how it's all going to pan out, because the U.S. and China are going to be going at loggerheads, from now on, because of, particularly if Trump gets reelected, because he's going to make them pay as they should. But it seems no one else wants to. The Europeans seem to be gutless and frightened about that. And so we'll see what happens. It's going to be really interesting on November 4th, if we assume we'll know the outcome by then, of what happens with this election, because that's going to determine an awful lot of things in our future.
Absolutely. And I say that in the meantime, kind of a closing thought is, it's why it's so important for our churches to be meeting right now, because we're the only ones keeping people honest right now in this world. And more than ever, we need the Lord. More than ever, we need to be gathering together in real fellowship, not Zoom fellowship, not virtual fellowship. We need to really be gathering with the saints and not forsaking that. And I know we've kept our church open. A lot of other great brothers have. And I'm grateful for the fact that you've been coming. As a matter of fact, you don't know this yet, but I'm going to try and get you over to our church next Thursday. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. See what
would be great.
But anyway, we just need to do that, and we need to just keep sticking with it and telling people the truth, because that's all that matters. So, Dawn, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
No, the last thing you said is the final thought. The gospel of Jesus Christ needs to be proclaimed. We need to see people face to face. And I mention all the time, thank God for you, people like John MacArthur, Rob McCoy, Jack Hibbs, Tom Hughes, Tim Thompson, and others who are having the doors of the church open to let people come in and hear the good news of Jesus. God bless you for doing that. And we hope and pray more will do this as the time goes by.
Amen and amen. And we're going to have an exciting week next week, because if I can get you there on Thursday, that'd be great. And then what'll be great about that is in that weekend, I got Charlie Kirk coming Sunday morning, which will be a lot of fun. And so we're just looking forward to just really engaging people, bringing the truth to them. And it's exciting. Guys, I want to just ask a favor. If you can, please subscribe to Hope for Our Time. Subscribe to CalvaryChapelSignalHill.com. Please follow Educating Our World. We want you to go to educatingourworld.com. One of the things that Don made very clear to me, and it doesn't sound morbid. I don't want you to think it is, but he said, James, he goes, as I get closer to going to heaven than I did being born, I want everybody to have these materials, and I want it to be for free, and I want it to get out there to everybody. And And God has been honoring that. We have had, it's been unbelievable, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I think we recently broke 1 million plus people going on the website, downloading material and all that kind of thing. It's been incredible. So we want you to be a part of that. Use that as resources. And here's the thing, guys, we ask for that. You know, follow me on Instagram, follow Don on Instagram. He's at Educating Our World. I'm at James Kaddis. Same thing on Facebook and all the other places that we are. And Tom as well. He's looking for that because here's the reason why. The more followers we have, the less censored we tend to be because we have a bigger voice and the more people hear it. So as you just take a moment to subscribe and as you take a moment to follow and go and browse and visit, it has nothing to do with monetization. And most of us don't even have advertising on our sites. I know I don't, most of us don't, but it's really more about just getting the word out and letting people know that Jesus Christ is coming back soon. So we really want you to do that, guys. So anyway, Don, thank you so much. Glad to have you here, bro. I'm excited that so many people are going to get to hear from you. And of course, as usual, you're a blessing. I know everybody's probably got a smile on their face from end to end, being able to hear from you. So guys, we want to thank you so much for letting us into your living rooms or on your jogs or wherever it is that you're going. Both Don and I have been blessed to be able to make this video. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. God bless you and have an incredibly wonderful weekend.
Hey, wasn't that fantastic? I told you it was going to be outstanding. And listen, by the way, I want to remind you, not only will Charlie Kirk be at James Church in the morning on August 30th, he's going to be at the 412 Church in San Jacinto in the afternoon at 4 p.m. To go to that, you have to get tickets at hopeforourtimes.com. Listen, I don't know if there's any tickets left, but if there are, make sure that you get them. That's going to be 4 o'clock. August 30th, and be sure not only subscribe to James and Don Stewart, but also to hopeforourtimes.com, the YouTube channel. It gives us, the more subscribers we have, the more people that just get to see it because it's going to come across their desk also. Listen, and by the way, notice the clock behind me? It says the exact same time it did before. You watched James and Don, guess what? That clock is broken. In fact, I don't even know what time it is, but it's not the time that it says on that clock. And anyways, until next Friday, I look forward to seeing you next Friday with my podcast, also my midweek update. I'm excited about these things. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. God bless you guys.